The sky was gray that day. Rain trickled down the window of my small apartment like silent tears from a wounded heart. I sat motionless, the termination letter still trembling in my hand. My name, Danielle Harris, printed coldly at the top, followed by an even colder line, "Your services are no longer required." It was signed by my father-in-law, Richard Grayson, the CEO of Grayson Tech, and a man who had never hidden his disdain for me. And as if the day couldn't be any worse, my wife, Emma, called me that evening. Her voice didn't tremble, her tone didn't waver. "Danielle, I think this marriage isn't working anymore. You've always been a good man, but, my father's right. You're not the kind of man who can give me the life I deserve." No fight. No plea. Just silence. She hung up. That was the day I lost my job, my wife, and what I thought was my home. But what they didn't know, what no one ever bothered to ask, was who I really was. I wasn't always a nobody. I was a dreamer. A survivor. Raised in the foster system, I learned early that life doesn't hand out kindness, you fight for it, or you create it for others. Books became my escape, libraries my home. I studied hard, worked part-time jobs, and earned a scholarship. I didn't have rich parents or a famous last name. But I had fire, and a vision. Years ago, I started developing a platform called EduVerse, an educational app built for children in low-income communities. It started small. Just a few videos, some practice tests. But I worked tirelessly on it, often staying up nights, skipping meals. I never talked about it at Richard's house. He called tech man's world and me the charity case. Emma laughed it off. I let it go. What none of them knew was that just a month before I was fired, I had closed a deal. EduVerse was acquired for $120 million. But I didn't spend the money on luxury cars or flashy clothes. I donated half of it to scholarships, to schools in rural towns, to mental health programs for foster youth. Because unlike Richard, I didn't measure success in dollars. I measured it in lives changed. After being fired and abandoned, I disappeared from the city. I traveled, not to Paris or Tokyo, but to rural America. Small towns in Georgia, dusty roads in New Mexico, forgotten schools in Detroit. I met kids who were learning because of EduVerse. I sat with single moms who cried, thanking the app for helping their children dream again. That was when something shifted inside me. I stopped feeling sorry. I stopped aching for what I had lost. I found peace in their stories. I found purpose in their smiles. And then, fate returned, but this time, with a twist. Grayson Tech was hacked. A massive breach. All their client data compromised. Stocks crashed. Investors pulled out. The once mighty empire was crumbling fast. Richard's reputation was in tatters, and the company was desperate for a lifeline. And guess who they reached out to? Me. It started with a call from an old colleague. Then a board meeting request. "We need a visionary," they said. "Someone who can rebuild trust." I walked back into that marble-tiled office, no longer as the poor son-in-law, but as a man in control. Richard looked older, thinner, his arrogance replaced by worry. Emma was sitting beside him, wearing the same designer grace but a very different face, this one painted with regret. "Danielle," Richard cleared his throat, "we made a mistake. You were always bright. We didn't see it." "No," I said calmly. "You saw it. You just didn't like it." I looked around the room and made my offer. I would help rebuild the company. Invest, lead, restructure. But on my terms. First, every employee fired unfairly had to be rehired with bonuses. Second, all contracts with unethical vendors would be terminated. Third, Richard must step down permanently. There was silence. Then a reluctant nod. And just like that, the company that once spat me out, was now in my hands. Weeks later, I received a handwritten letter. From Emma. It read. Danielle. I don't know where to begin. I thought I was marrying beneath me. I didn't realize I was leaving behind a man with more strength, more integrity, and more heart than anyone I've ever known. My father judged your past. I judged your silence. But you were building a future, not just for yourself, but for so many others. I was blind. I'm sorry. I placed the letter in a drawer. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her back. I had already won. Today, Grayson Tech is no longer just a corporation. It's a movement. We fund tech schools for low-income kids. We sponsor startups from first-gen college students. We've rebuilt trust, not just with clients, but with the people who believed they were never meant to succeed. People on social media call my story nuclear revenge. But that's not what it is. It's the power of grace. Of staying silent when you could scream. Of building when they expect you to break. If you've ever been rejected, humiliated, or underestimated, remember this. You don't have to fight fire with fire. Sometimes, the quiet ones, the forgotten ones, the ones pushed to the side, come back not to destroy, but to transform. And when they do, the world never forgets them. Because the greatest revenge isn't power. It's purpose. And when purpose walks back into the room, even those who broke you, stand in awe.